All right, welcome Home and Podcast listeners to this very special interview edition of the Home and Podcast. I'm Jordan, and this week we have the one and only Patricia Richardson, who played our beloved matriarch Jill Taylor, of course. Patricia was incredibly gracious with her time, giving us lots of fun stuff to talk about, including what it was like to meet famous guest stars like Evander Holyfield and George Foreman, her favorite Jill moments, when she knew the show would make it, and her first thoughts as the show finally wrapped up after 8 seasons. There's this and a lot more in our 2-hour interview, so sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Okay, so you are Adam, and you're the one that's 28?
Yeah, we're both 28.
You're both the age of my twins.
Yeah, we grew up together in Michigan, and we watched the show, and that's why we started the podcast.
Yes, I gathered that. But did you grow up in Detroit? Where did you grow up?
Outside of Flint. We're both from Davison, it's called.
Wait a minute. Outside of Flint?
That's right, yeah.
Is your family still there?
No, well, Jordan's family's still there. My parents moved to northern Michigan.
What? Are they having the same water problem?
No, they were actually hooked up to the Detroit water system, so they didn't have that problem.
Wait, I thought. Oh, I see. So yeah, Detroit was.
They're like 8 miles east, so it's a smaller suburb.
Yeah, very small.
So they didn't. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad for them then.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay, so I will tell you that my twins were 3 months old and in my dressing room when I did the pilot, and I was still nursing them. And that's why I'm so huge in the pilot. Like, I could have picked up Tim and thrown him across the room because I'd had a high-risk pregnancy. I'd been in bed for, like 4 or 5 months. And then after that, 2 weeks after they were born, and we were so happy they were healthy because it had been dicey, they started getting colic. So then both of them had colic for 3 months. So my husband and I had been like walking them all night for 3 months and never had a night's sleep. So they just had started sleeping through the night when this happened. So it was like, what? I'll tell you that story. I don't know if have we started yet?
We're recording, but we'll do a quick introduction and then we'll formally kind of start things.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically what we have is like a list of questions. We got some questions from listeners on Twitter as well, and it's recorded. It's not live or anything, so we can go back and edit and do all that good stuff.
Oh, good. Yeah. So if I cuss, you can take it out?
If you say anything and you're just like, I don't want that on there.
Yes, that's good. Also, because I'm trying really hard not to cuss.
Hey, if you do, that's okay.
Well, it's all Tim's fault because
isn't it always?
The set, those poor children, the things they heard. Oh my gosh. And I was just as bad as Tim because I've always been a kind of a terrible cusser. And my children, for a while, we had this agreement. I said, okay, just give me, we're going to keep a running tab and you can just charge me a nickel when I use the F word. Or other words, and so you could just try. And then that was getting very expensive. So I thought, well, maybe we're going to have to make this a penny. And then I would say, forget the money. It's just you don't say what I say.
There you go. Do as I do, not as I say.
Yes, exactly. But I think I started doing that because when I was growing up, and particularly when I was in high school and college, I always looked a lot younger than I was, and I always looked like Polly Cheerleader. And my name is Patricia, and people always wanted to call me Patty or Patsy.
Right.
Both names I loathed and felt diminished by, as well as an image that people had of me of being this like perky, dumb person. And so I really hated it when people just would sort of assume things about me, and I loved smashing through whatever preconceived notion they had about me by being completely graceless, tasteless, and cussing, which was really not the way to deal with it, as my father used to tell me frequently. I'm trying to get out of it. But what happened was I started on that premise, and then I started really enjoying the use of those words because let's face it, when you've stubbed your toe or something really terrible has happened, or in my case, broken the same toe 2 years in a row, there's just nothing more satisfying than the string of really lusciously worded sentence. You know,
I don't think I've ever heard it described as luscious. That's interesting.
I mean, when you really, really, you know, there's just nothing like it. I've also often told my girlfriends and I have sat around talking about how, you know, when you're in labor, you know, the moaning that you do when you're in labor or screaming, whatever it may be, it is very satisfying. You know, it's a release. And my kids, we all have migraines. And
really,
yeah, bad, yeah. And I've always taken care of my kids when they had migraines. I'm really good at giving like a head massage, face massage, little back massage when they were in agony and the pills weren't working. And I would say, just go ahead and moan. just go ahead. I don't care. And I think sometimes that sort of helps.
Yeah.
You know, in any
I'm pretty sure
thing.
there are studies that confirm that. So
is that true?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Oh wow! Well, yeah, it's just.
I'm not going to cite any sources.
I mean, where'd you find these at?
My father had 4 daughters, and he was so sweet because he used to try to do it in Spanish, which is kind of funny because my father's not at all Spanish. But for some reason, he'd go Santa Maria. Blah, 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 blah. We'd be going, Dad, why are you cursing in Spanish?
It's a different level of catharsis when you do it in a different language, I think.
Oh, it was so funny to us. Yeah, I don't think I ever heard him really use a, you know, or something like that. But you know, I shouldn't say that either. I guess
say whatever you want, and yeah, we can bleep it out, edit it out.
But that was, I think, the worst. I mean, it wasn't like he used like the F word or anything. Well. But on the set, oh my God, you know, Tim had been doing. That's an interesting thing. I don't know if you've heard this from anyone. I had never seen Tim do stand up. I didn't even know who he was when they tried to get me to do the show, and I didn't want to do it, and they're trying to talk me into it. But they sent me over his stand-up when he'd won the ACE Award on Showtime. And you know, do you want me to tell the story of when this came out? I don't know. I don't think I heard Carmen's thing too, and I don't think he really told that story.
No, that's fine.
I had been, as I said, I'd done 3 sitcoms before this one. I'd done one that people don't know about called Deadline, which was supposed to be a live show for Fox. It was going to be a live 30 minutes. I was still living in New York then doing theater. And they wanted all theater people because it was going to be live. And I was playing the romantic lead. And we were all working at a newspaper like the New York Post. So it was going to be sort of this yellow journalism sort of paper. And the reason it was such a good idea, so that we could do live news every week. And so it would be this newsroom, and they would, you know, kind of have a basic plot every week, but then add in news stories from that week, you know, into each story. So they got a lot of theater actors, and oh gosh, David, who wrote that movie Miami Blues. Oh gosh, I can't think of it. Really, really good showrunner writer, and so we got ready to shoot the pilot that night. We were in pretty good shape. And so we shot it as though it would be live as a pilot to show to Fox. And the night that we shot it, I mean, it was a disaster. You would never know that these were theater actors. I mean, people went up and just looked at each other. The camera work, like there was one scene I was supposed to be doing a scene with the guy I was playing opposite romantically, and we're in this little office, and we're all ready to go, and the cameras came up in the different room. They came up in the other room, in the newsroom, and we were like, hello, we're over here. and so that kind of stuff went on, and needless to say, that one didn't get picked up. So that was my first one. The second one was Norman Lear's show called Double Trouble, which went 13 and died. It just had terrible ratings. And so the whole thing died. My contract ran out, and I went back to New York where I still lived, and I was doing I was creating the role of Elaine in the Miss Firecracker contest for Beth Henley. And it was a huge hit. And I was so excited to be in this amazing show with, I'd gone to school with Beth and a couple of other people that I'd known a long time. And we had already done The Wake of Jamie Foster together for Beth, and it had failed dismally on Broadway. And so we were all so happy to be together again and now doing this show that was a success. So we were all thrilled. And then what happened was Double Trouble reran again in the summer, and it was a huge success. So they came back to us and wanted us to sign new contracts and do it again. And I was like, oh, no. I'm doing this play in New York. And they were like, what, are you on crack? We're offering you all this money to go to LA and do a series. And the series had been Katie Seagal's younger twin sisters who were really cute, and they were dancers, but the series was just fluff. It was really, and it was. So I was like, no, I want to stay here and do this play. I think we're going to move it, and it's great. And even my agents who were then Triad, I had this one agent who I kept following wherever he went. This Jenny Delaney got on the phone. She was like, how much money do you want? They're offering like $30,000 a week. What do you? And I'm like, don't talk about the money. Don't talk about the money. I don't want to hear about it. I just don't want to hear it. I just can't do that. I have to stay here because, here I can, this is what I'm acting for, is to do roles like this, and
something you're passionate about,
Exactly. And I'd already saved money because I'd done like 13 episodes of it before. So for us to have, I don't know what it was, we might have had 30,000 in the bank at that point, so we were like, yay, we have money. So I was like, no, just don't say anything. So that was when Brandon Tartikoff was head of the network, and everybody's like, you're saying no to Brandon Tartikoff? And I was like, yeah. So anyway,
that fits into your persona of just breaking the rules and doing what everybody doesn't want you to do, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that I try to tell people this all the time, and I try to still live by this rule, and it's harder to do now for different reasons. But is if you're always just doing in your life for the pure reasons of doing it because you love it, then you're more likely to get what you want anyway. I used to always say this to my kids when they're in school, because all the schools are pushing our kids towards result. I mean, it's always about the grade, right? I mean, it's not about what you're really learning or trying to move towards what you love to learn or learning it because it's interesting or but no, it's really about the grade, which is how you end up getting so many kids cheating and why we have this culture that we have now where we have this president. I mean, there's this, and I really think, by the way, well, let's go to get politics, but I think Ronald Reagan started the whole nightmare with, you got to be a winner, you got to be, that whole mentality that started in the 80s of winning and losing and being successful being the most important thing, started in the 80s. And I kind of felt like it was really hard to get our children back into a headset of process being more important than result and what you learn being more important and blah, blah, blah. That's gone. I mean, it's really hard. It's very hard to get kids to, I mean, that's just not the way our society is. And, how do you teach that to kids when everything around them is pointing in another direction? But that's a whole another thing. We should talk about home improvement. So,
we'll talk about whatever you want. Jordan, do you want to start with the specific question, Jordan?
Well, yeah. So we have a few written down, and feel free to just, go wherever you want with them or whatever. You were dabbling a little bit on how you started with home improvement.
Well, yeah. And so they had me come in. They called me one day. What happened was the twins had finally started sleeping. So Ray and I were so relieved. And I started auditioning a little bit again. Ray had done a series with Judith Ivey for Jim Burrows that had gone 13 and died, but he was doing that the whole time I was pregnant, which was really good for us because he was making money. And we were panic stricken because when we had a second child, we hadn't counted on 3. So now we were, oh my God, 3 children. How are we going to get them through school? So they had cast me in an hour dramedy, maybe it was a half-hour dramedy, written by Neil Barlin and Carol Black, who did who had done the the thing that Danny Stern did the voiceover for. Oh gosh,
Wonder Years.
Yeah, Wonder Years. They wrote that, and now they had written a show called Home Movies, ironically, and Home Movies was going to be a dramedy about a young couple and their baby. And it was, I was signed to do it originally with Danny Stern, and they gave me a holding fee, and then we were gonna. This was like March, and we were gonna do the film dramedy, not a sitcom, thank God, in September. And so I was ecstatic because it gave me all those months to lose the weight that I had from, producing a half gallon of milk a day and having 15 pounds of baby, literally 15 pounds worth of twins. And so I was like, yes, this is perfect. I don't have to do a audience show, which is so difficult. And I can take the babies with me to work and it'll be great. Because a film show, you spend a lot more time in your dressing room waiting around. So I was, yes, this is perfect. So one day the phone rings, and it's my agent and they said, oh, okay, bad news. I'm like, what? They said they decided to cancel home movies because Danny Stern decided he didn't want to do it. And then Paul Reiser was going to do it, but then Cadillac Man came out and he decided he had a film career and didn't want to do TV. So then Michael Chiklis, I had gone in to read with Michael Chiklis because the ABC decided we would be a good match. And then they decided to put Michael Chiklis in the commish. So we still didn't have a husband. So they decided to cancel home movies, but ABC wants you instead tomorrow, this is a Wednesday, tomorrow, to go start another show called Home Improvement and just go in as a last minute replacement for somebody that's being fired. And it's a stand-up comic named Tim Allen. I'm like, who? And they said, and you would start tomorrow. Now, they were going to shoot the pilot Friday, but if you'll start tomorrow, they'll shoot the pilot Tuesday. You can rehearse Thursday, Friday. If you need it Saturday, they'll do the camera blocking Monday, and they'll shoot Tuesday. And I'm like, I'm huge. I'm huge. And I'm producing a half gallon of milk a day. I have to nurse the kids because they were so big when they were born. They're really hungry. And they eat like every 2 hours, and it takes me 40 minutes to nurse both of them. I mean, how could you possibly? We'll wait. We don't care. You can go up there, nurse, we'll all wait for you to do this. And we'll give you a driver, and we'll put cribs in the dressing room, and whatever, we'll do it. But, I was like, look, I've never played a thankless mom part, and I'm not interested in playing a thankless mom. And I really don't want to do another sitcom. I've already done 3. I just don't really want to do a sitcom. And they were like, look, just come and talk to the guys, talk to the creators. They created Roseanne. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. They created Roseanne? That was my favorite show. I loved her, and I loved the show. And I was like, oh, excuse me.
Put one in the jar.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You put that in the jar. I was like, oh my God, I love that show. And so I was, and I said, okay, send. They said, well, we'll send you the script. Look at the script. We'll send you a tape of Tim. Look at that. And then get back to us and tell us what you think. So they sent the script. My husband and I did the 1-page test, which we did on because both of us did a lot of series work. So we did our 1-page test, which is you open the script anywhere, and in 1 page, you can tell whether they're writing jokes or whether they are telling a story and creating characters. In 1 page, you can tell. You open it up, and it's like, oh, they're telling a story. They're not just trying to tell a joke every, 3 seconds. So we're like, whoa, this is good. So we read the whole script, and it was a really good pilot script. I mean, and my part in the pilot looked like it was really being developed. She's trying to get a job, then she doesn't get it. He's trying to get it. It was a really good, tight, very well-written pilot. And I was impressed. And then we looked at Tim's tape, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, he's pretty funny. But it's all tools and stuff. My husband, who grew up building homes with his father and worked construction crews all his life, was on the floor laughing, thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. And I was like, yeah, okay, all right.
I'm glad somebody likes it.
Well, it's a guy thing, and I was like, okay, so then, yeah, all right. Well, I'll go in and talk to these guys. So I went in, and they did a snow job on me you wouldn't believe. And they told me all this stuff about how, well, it's not being called the Tim Allen Show because it's not going to be the Tim Allen Show. And it's about why men and women should never live together. And it's just as much about Deborah Tannen's book, You Don't Understand, as it is about Iron John, because we can't just be blowing things up every week. And it's really about, it's about 2 things, really. It's about, yes, men and masculinism and all of that. But really, we want this show to be about a celebration of the American family. And about, men and women, and trying to make masculinism and feminism work together. And the reason it does is because these 2 people love each other. And so even though they're coming from completely different places a lot of the time, what we see is how they overcome these differences and how much they love each other. And while he's trying to make these boys men, she's trying to civilize them. So they're kind of working at, at different odds in terms of the way they're trying to raise these men. She's trying to raise them to be gentlemen. He's just trying to raise them to be grunting men. They're also, what they wanted the focus of the show to be really is this marriage. And how can this marriage work? When she's equally strong feminist as he is a masculine, which is good for me because I was. And there were no women in that production team or really the writing room that had any power. So I was the only woman there to kind of go up against these men. I shouldn't say against, I should say collaborate with, which they were very generous to do. But there was no executive producer, writer, woman, except for 1 year when we had Maxine Lapidus, who quit and left. And as she left, I'm going to tell this story because nobody knows this story. It's the first time I've ever told it.
Oh, man.
Fantastic.
Hot take.
Fantastic.
Okay, so when Max left, I didn't know she was leaving. And she was there, I think, the second year of the show. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. But I really don't think she'd mind me telling this story. Maybe she would. I don't think she would.
I don't think she would either.
I think it's fine.
I have not seen her since, but I will tell you that the reason I had the carrot costume is due to this woman. So I will be eternally grateful to her because it was though I'll talk about her later, and I did love my costumer on that show, Nicole. This was the greatest costume we had, which was Max's carrot costume that she loaned me that day. But Max was, having a big hard time because she was the only woman who was an executive producer writer. The other two women that we had that were fantastic writers, Marley Sims, who always wrote with Elliot Schoenman, who became our showrunner, one of our two showrunners, from the third year on. He was a fantastic writer, and he and Marley Sims wrote all of the Jill-driven episodes from the third year on. But Marley was only there 3 times a week. And then Roz Moore, who was a fantastic writer, was wonderful. But she was not an executive producer writer, therefore didn't have all that much power in the room. So every Monday after we did the read-throughs, Tim and I both went together to talk through the scripts and what needed to be happening. And that I would be the only woman in the room. So that got really difficult. But anyway, how did I get off on this? Now I'm like wandering away from the subject again.
That's okay. That's what we want.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of wandering away the subject, so I don't have to tell you the story because I'm nervous about telling. Okay.
All right. In that case, let's get back on subject.
Well, okay. So Max comes to my room. I open my dressing room door one day. Max is standing there, and I go, "Hi, Max," and she goes, "I'm gone." I'm like, "Whoa, what?" She says, "I'm leaving," and I'm like, "Oh no, I'm so sorry. That's terrible." She says, "Yeah, I just wanted to say goodbye and tell you you're." And left.
What a send-off.
I know. I was like, okay, all right. Well, I know that she was trying to develop my character, and I think she was just kind of trying to tell me
that's one way to say it. Yeah.
I know, and that I don't think I ever told any of the other producers that happened. I just was like, okay.
Yeah. See you later.
Yeah, we'll try to carry on.
We'll try to carry on. But anyway, so those first couple of years were the best for me in so many ways because I was so happy that the babies were healthy and I got to bring them with me to work, and they became sort of mascots for everybody on the set. And there was a big glass, our big room where we did the readings every Monday morning was a huge office, sort of a office room with a big long table, and we all sat around, and glass windows all the length of it that looked down on the stage. And so when the babies who then became toddlers, so that they were there until they started nursery school. When they wanted to see me, if they were in the dressing room or were feeling like they missed me, the babysitter would bring them into that room, and they could like look through the glass and wave at us and stuff. And everybody down the stage, we'd all wave back up at them, and so that sort of helped during times, and that was kind of cool. That was nice. And then sometimes they would just come down on the set and visit.
Yeah,
and hang around in that little grassy play yard.
Of course,
where we had the back.
I am a new father, and I work from home, and so she's home with me a lot. So how
old is she?
She's about 4 months now.
Oh no, my gosh! You really are a new father.
Yeah, so I totally can see what you mean is just being home with them and being able to experience all the new things that happen like all the time and all that stuff.
It was really difficult because John Pasquin, who I adore and was our first director for 2 years, wanted to rehearse in order, which I've never seen before, because there were so many inexperienced actors in the show. So what that meant was going there first thing in the morning and sitting around while they did Tool Time, which I was never in, or sitting around, because in the first couple of years, I never had a scene alone with anybody. I mean, even if I was a scene with my friend who was played by
Betsy Randall.
Betsy Randall, Tim would have to be in it. Tim had to be in every scene I did. If I was in a scene with the kids, he was in it. If I did a scene with Betsy, if I had a scene with, I didn't have scenes alone with Earl or Rick or anybody, which was very bizarre because when I had done the meeting with the guys, they had all said, oh, no, it's not going to be a Thankless Mom part. You're going to have a job that you go to with people that you work with. You're going to have family. You're going to have your own friends. You are, you're going to, this is going to be, we want you to be strong enough so that Tim has somebody to push back against and enough of a character so that, so that it's an equal deal between the two of you, because otherwise it looks like Tim's an abusive husband. You really need to be able to push back, and you need to be a really full-fledged, strong character that is an equal with him so that there's a equal fight going on here. And anyway, so I had the impression that I was going to be this character they were going to develop, and they weren't. John Pasquin and I used to joke because in that first year or two, when I would be coming in from outside, we were all really big on it. This is one of the things I loved about the three original writers is that they were behavior was really important to them. Reality was important. We would, every year in the summer, they would come and we would talk about what's the next year going to be. Okay, we hang every year on what the reality of the family's life would be. Okay, the fall is this sport, the winter is that sport. This is the time of year for this and the family life. And these are the things they would be doing. And of course, we worked around holidays. We had the Christmas episode, the Halloween episode. Everything's shaped around that. And then what other ideas would come up? And so, and then John Pasquin was so brilliant at behavior. Like that's why you saw in that first year, the boys skating all around the house. And there was so much behavior. Everything was around the behavior in the house. And so that brings up a lot of things that I saw in the questions that you were asking about favorite things that I remember about the show. Because there was so much in stuff that people didn't know about that had to do with us creating the behavior in that home life.
Yeah, and it feels, so I have 3 older brothers, so I growing up, I felt like my house. Just the boys running around going every which way. They had all the different things.
My house too. I had 2 sons.
Right, exactly. So, you didn't have to draw on anything crazy. You're like, this is what happens at home.
No, I was bringing in everything. So much in that show is my life. Like the cancer episode was my life. The reason the cancer episode happened was because the writers came to my house that summer and we were talking about, okay, what can we do next year? And I said, okay, well, we had a huge cancer scare with my son. We were in Hawaii on vacation, and my son was very athletic, and he hurt his leg, and we went to a doctor. And, doctor's looking at his leg, and he said, has your pediatrician mentioned to you that your son has a goiter? And I just burst out laughing. I was like, what? A goiter? People don't have goiters now. Goiter is like 18th century novels. What? What are you talking about? So he showed us the butterfly on his neck. And he said, that's a goiter. I went, oh my God, I didn't even know what a goiter was. And he said, okay, you need to have that checked when you get back to the States, because it could be indicative of some sort of thyroid disease. And we're like, what? So we go back, and it was a long story that was not the story that we wrote, but we did go through a horrible thyroid cancer scare because this first endocrinologist that we went to handled the whole thing really badly. He scared the hell out of Henry, asked personal questions of me in front of Henry, took too long to get the test results back. And the test initially, the sonogram looked bad. And we found out that Ray's family, there was thyroid cancer and everything. We went through 3 weeks of hell waiting for this endocrinologist to get back to us, which she wouldn't do no matter how many times our pediatrician called her. We didn't know what was going on. So anyway, we went through the scare. He didn't have it, but he then just had to go every year to be checked. So I'm talking to the writers and I say, I think we could do a cancer episode because thyroid cancer is one of the easiest ones to cure. It doesn't travel. It's something that we could point out to people because they could all look, you can see it on our neck. And if it's pointed out to people, then they could all go, oh, no, do I have one of these? And it's funny. Goiter is funny. It's funny.
That's right. No doubt about that.
Nothing funnier than goiter. And if we're going to do the C word, we can get away with it because that's funny and it's not easy to cure, but it is curable. And I think that's something we could maybe get away with. And so then Elliot, who's so brilliant, and Elliot and Matt, our original writer, hired Elliot because he apprenticed under Elliot when they both worked at the Cosby Show, which was another show like ours that was based on behavior and about a marriage and about and completely those writers were based on writing not jokes. They were based on writing a show that was based on relationships and on story and on how people behave with each other and the behavior of a family. And so they all were writing from the same place. And so Elliot said, and Marley and I had been wanting to write a cancer episode for a long time. This is something we really wanted to do. So you're right in the ballpark of something that we've been thinking of for a long time. So we'll think about that. And so then they came back to me a couple months later and they said, we tried to make it a different kind of cancer, but we had to come back to thyroid and goiter because there just wasn't anything better than thyroid and goiter. And they wrote a completely different kind of thing than what happened with Henry. But Henry everybody used to say, yeah, that's Henry's story, but it really wasn't Henry's story. That wasn't at all what happened. Our family was a much scarier situation.
I wanted to get back to, sorry to interrupt. We were talking a little bit about earlier on the show. And you mentioned, when you opened the page, you did the 1-page test and you thought, oh, there's something interesting here. I was just wondering, is there like a moment, was that the moment when you knew that the show had something special, or was there something during the pilot or during the first season?
No, it was the pilot. I was astonished. In fact, even, the first day that I showed up, I decided to do it mostly because of money, because I didn't think it would go. You're too young to know this. There was a series called Lenny. And it was around a comedian named Lenny. And a friend of mine, Lee Garlington, was the wife on that one. And she's great. Everybody in it was great. And it bombed. And so that had happened just before this. And so we read the script. It was really good. Tim was really good. And they offered me a bunch more money. I was already on a holding fee. And I wasn't going to get out of the contract until December. And so they said, okay, we will give you this much more money to do the pilot. And then if it's not picked up in May, we'll let you out of your contract then, instead of waiting until December. And so for me, this was like, oh, this isn't going to go. It's another pilot with a sitcom. And people have already been like, yeah, family with a sitcom, who cares? So I was like, it probably will go.
It's a win-win.
And then I'll have enough money to where I can really afford not to work for the rest of this year. And I can be with my babies. I just wanted to be with the babies. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, if I do this, Ray, then I just worked for 5 days. And if I can keep the nursing going, which was my thing, I really wanted to make sure it didn't get interrupted. If I can keep the nursing going, then I can just be with the babies the rest of the year. And then you just get a job and we'll be okay. And so that was the intention, was to just do the pilot, have fun. I hadn't acted in a year, just get out of it, get the money and be with my babies I was so in love with. And my 5-year-old, Henry was getting ready to start kindergarten. And he was really having trouble having lost both of us to these little monsters that he was jealous of, because they appeared and then it was like we were gone because he never saw it because we were always like dealing with the colic, so I was like, oh, I have time for Henry again. So I do the pilot. First day of rehearsal, I get there. Huge, right? Because I'm 160 pounds or something, and just, lactating.
Yeah. You've got lots of things going on.
And I come to the set and here's Tim, heartbroken because he's lost not just Francis Fisher, but he's lost Clint Eastwood. Yeah. And he is really upset about that. So I end up in set. Here comes, me, like clunk, clunk, clunk with the big breasts and the lactating. And I come on the set and everybody's panicked about being fired. That's always what happens. If somebody gets fired, everybody on the set starts to feel threatened. And the poor kids, I met the kids and they all had this wild-eyed look in their eyes. They all look like, is it going to be me next? Is it going to be me? And everybody kind of is freaked, really freaked. And so we do the read-through and then everybody, and I had so much fun because I'm just like, well, this is gas. I'm getting to act again. And I thought Tim was hilarious. I could barely get through the reading because I was laughing. So he was so funny. And then I guess Tim thought I was funny too, because we were both just laughing at each other so much. And so that was like an instant chemistry thing. And I think everybody breathed a sigh of relief, because I think they all knew as soon as the first read that we did, just sitting around. And they were very kind. The producers didn't watch it. At least they didn't overtly watch it where I could see them. They kind of went away and just let Pasquin and the cast read it together. And I think they didn't want me, I guess, to feel like on the spot too much and have everybody come in and watch it. But we did it. It was great. We put it on its feet. We had a run through that afternoon. I think everybody was really happy. And then, but meanwhile, I'm just still thinking, oh, if this is really fun. But, that's not going to go. I had done countless pilots that didn't go. And so did Ray. And Ray had done a bunch of shows that went to 13 and died. I had done 2 shows that went to 13 and died, and a pilot that died. So we were just like, it doesn't matter how good a show is. I mean, the 2 shows that I did, FM and Eisenhower and Lutz, they were great shows, and they didn't go. So the quality doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So, so I was like, okay, well, so we do the pilot that night. That audience, I was so stunned. I had one laugh. The line in the pilot where I turn to him and say, "Not tonight." He makes a comment about, I don't know, sex or something.
Sure.
And then I'm ironing, and I stop ironing, and I look at him and go, "Not tonight." We had a 13-second laugh. They had to cut the laughs for the pilot, because the laughs, we had 11-second laugh, 13-second laughs. We had to just wait. We just stood there and waited while they laughed.
It's a good feeling.
And I just thought, because I'd done so many of these already, and so had Ray. I'd gone to Ray's, he'd gone to mine. We were really used to them packing a house when you're shooting the pilot with friends. And the friends always laugh too much. And so I just kept thinking, boy, did they stack this house. Where did they find these people?
That's funny.
They must be paying them extra.
That's what I thought. I really did. I was like, God, these people are really overdoing it, because I'm really tired of standing here with the iron in my hand, waiting. Stop already, so, but I mean, I knew it was funny, but I really thought this was overdoing it. And so, but it was a very successful night. People were just on the moon, the network people, everybody, they're all just going crazy. And I go back up to my dressing room and I'm just thinking, oh my God, this was so weird. And I get into the dressing room and my husband is up there and he looks at me and he goes, well, congratulations. That's the show you're going to be doing for the next 7 years. And I was like, what? And he goes, oh, it's good. It's really good. And I'm like, no way, really? And he went, yep. And I went, but I wasn't planning on doing this show for 7 years. And he's like, yeah, it's good. It's really, 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 really good. And then we started. And by the time we started, it was like 5 months. And Joe, my nursing schedule had totally gotten off because of the pilot. I felt bad about people waiting, and I started pumping. And after the pumping thing and the milk and the bottles, Joe just never wanted to nurse again. So he ended up not nursing, and then eventually I had to take Roxy off. So by the time we started again, we were on bottles, but I was still huge. So I felt I felt bad about it, but they had just done Roseanne and they were like, oh, don't worry about it. We don't care. And then in the tabloids that turned into producers force Pat Richardson to stay heavy for the part.
Oh, geez.
I'm like, what? How can anybody force me to stay heavy? You think they're force feeding me on the set?
They just got a great spread,
I know. They made up so much stuff.
Right.
I'd never been through the tabloid stuff before, and I didn't know how much stuff they just make.
Hard to prepare for that, I would imagine.
Yeah, I was really hard. And then they started following me around and trying to take pictures of me and my kids.
Oh, lovely.
Which is why to this day I live behind gates.
Well, there you go. I was wondering, okay, you talked about, the great carrot costume that you borrowed. We have a question here that asks, did you keep any props or anything like that from the show? It sounds like you had to borrow the carrot costume, so maybe not that, but was there anything else?
No, I couldn't get that. I would have if I could have. Yes, I did. I kept funny little things. Like, I don't know if you remember the episode with Polly Holiday and I, where she had given me that teapot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I kept the teapot.
Very nice.
I kept the teapot that Polly gave me. And then on the set, we had this little orange juice container that was really funny. And it had like a little bright little face on it. And I always loved that little orange juice picture. So I kept that, and I kept the teapot. And, I kept, and I still have, because I've been kind of waiting for the time because I kept some clothes that I knew I would want to auction someday for charities. And I did, when I was doing Last Man Standing, I did auction some of those things during Last Man Standing because I'm involved with this charity, Cure PSP. Progressive supranuclear palsy is a disease that my dad died of. It's a brain disease that they now think may be the path to curing Alzheimer's, because it's the same tau gene that is in Alzheimer's and also in all the brains of the football players and the vets who have head injuries. That protein growing in the brain is the same protein that killed my dad in this disease called PSP, and Dudley Moore died of it. And all of these diseases, don't get me involved, but go to the Cure PSP site. There's a very, very long story that I wrote at the time, right after Dad died, about that whole long thing that happened. He died when I was doing.
Yeah, we'll post a link.
Yeah,
with that.
He died when I was doing West Wing. It was really rough, and my mother died when I was doing Strong Medicine, and they were both quite ill for 10 years. And so I went through this period. It started during Home Improvement when my mother almost died of meningitis during that period. Because she had such bad, So I was, I always tell this to my daughter-in-law and my daughter about having children earlier, which of course neither of them will probably listen to. My daughter-in-law is 31 and she's a really big deal editor in New York. She does coloring. She's a colorist. And she's the only woman who can do what she does in New York and is very much in demand. And then my son, her husband, works at Bloomberg. He's a producer and he makes those explainer videos. I don't know if you go to Bloomberg. Yeah, he makes those. Well, for them to have a baby, it's going to mean she's going to have to step out for a while. And it's really hard for her to just stop working. But she's already 31. And I'm like, guys, don't be like me. I hit menopause, dying parents, teenagers, and the height of my career all at the same time. And it is not a good idea. Because when you hit menopause, you want to kill everyone you know. Because you are so emotional and you're just like 0 to 60, and then you got teenagers, which would drive everyone insane anyway. And my grandmother used to say when they get to be teenagers, bury them and dig them back up again when they want. So, you got that. And then you have dying parents. My parents were ill for 10 years. And my sisters and I were flying in tandem back to the East Coast constantly with one surgery after another or one thing. So you don't want all those things happening. And that is what's happening to our whole baby boomer generation is we've got, older people taking care of their older parents and some taking care of their grandparents as well. So you had this sandwich generation of taking care, plus their kids, plus it's just, so that's what happened to me was that, and I got divorced halfway through Home Improvement. So I have the shows, everything for me is it's sort of like BD and AD, before the divorce, right. After the divorce. So when you see me get really skinny, that's the AD episodes. Because during the summer, between the fourth year and the fifth year, I got divorced and lost a lot of weight from just stress. And they were very kind to me that fifth year. They were kind of giving me a break because that was a hard year. But also, never mind. You just ask a question. I'm blabbing.
No, we want you to be as blabby as you're prepared to be. So
I'm very blabby.
Hey, that's great. That's why we're here. We want to try something, or I want to try something, a little bit of a speed round where I'm going to throw out some questions, and you can elaborate as much or as little as you want. But there's about 10 of them, so we're just going to kind of work our way through them. Does that sound all right?
I feel like I've already been speed talking. I have to slow myself down. Everybody in my family talks fast because it was 4 girls. And to get a word in at the dinner table, you had to talk fast.
That's
okay,
funny.
So, all right.
So
no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
I know, I'm starting to feel nervous.
You can pass if you want, but, we'd rather you didn't.
Oh, I can pass?
I shouldn't have said that.
You should, actually, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm so glad you told me I could pass.
There's actually not passing. I misspoke. All right, first question.
Okay, so wait, we're going to call these the Nazi list of questions that I have no choice but to answer. Okay.
I'll write that in my notes, I guess.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to call it that. First question. Favorite guest star or non-regular cast member to work with?
Okay, I knew you were going to come up with this favorite thing. Sure. And I'm going to say right now, I hate it when people ask me for a favorite thing.
You're not going to like the speed round.
I'm going to hate it, and I'm going to tell you right now why. Whenever I was doing the show, people would call up and say, "What is your favorite movie? What is your favorite book? Who is your favorite son? Who is your favorite this?" And I would say, I have too many things that I love to be able to say, this is my favorite, that's my favorite. And if I say this is my favorite actor, then I'm going to hurt so-and-so's feelings. That's a friend of mine. Or I have like 50 favorite movies and 50 favorite books. Or if you ask me which of the three boys is my favorite son, it's going to hurt the feelings of the boy I don't say. And so, the favorite guest stars, if I say Polly Holiday, who was my mother and I adored working with and was fantastic. Will I hurt Bonnie, who was Tim's favorite mother? No, I love her as well. And then, we had sisters, and, Trudy was Rick's wife, and she played one of my sisters, and I loved her being on. And then I had two friends. There was Betsy Randall and Mary Angela Pino, and then Doris, the woman who played Doris, was always so much fun. And so there's so many guest stars. I mean, we had, the dancing episode with Gloria. Oh gosh, I'm having a moment of. We had all these old stars on. Jack Ryan, is that his
Jack
name?
Elam?
Elam. Jack Elam was.
Ernest Borgnine as well. Yeah, right.
Ernest Borgnine. Yeah. I mean, I have so many signed things you would not believe. Still, I have even Evander Holyfield gloves.
Oh, that's funny.
Who
yeah,
was terrifying. You have terrifying. But here, can I tell you the Evander Holyfield? Is it too long if I tell you that story?
There's no such thing too long.
Okay, we had just had the big, huge, major earthquake in '93, and we had to fly. We had to leave the kids to go to Atlanta to do the Habitat for Humanity's Super Bowl episode in Atlanta, right, with all those stars. And Ray and I felt terrible. We were really worried about leaving the kids because it had been, everybody in the show did. Everybody was worried about leaving LA because it had only been like 3 weeks before or something. So we're already worried. So we go there. And the Habitat house we were working on was in slums of Atlanta, really bad slums of Atlanta. And so, Ray was working my husband was in the episode, and he was working on the house that we were working on. So fortunately, he was with me. But this particular day, he wasn't. And I, thank God, had just happened to see the Evander Holyfield fight in, where was it, where the guy landed in in the middle of the ring with a parachute.
Oh,
did you see that?
I remember hearing about it, where the guy before the match comes in on a it wasn't.
No, it was in the middle of the match. Holyfield was
wasn't
winning.
Planned though.
Holyfield was winning the match, and in the middle of when he was winning, this guy interrupts the match, stops the match by landing with a parachute in the middle of the thing. And we were pulling for Holyfield, these people that I was watching the thing with, and he got at a real disadvantage because they had to stop the match. Get this out. I'm sorry.
No, he is
out.
He deserves it.
Yeah, get this guy out of the ring and start again. And we were like, this is so unfair, because Holyfield was about to win the match. And then this stopped, and we were like, this is so unfair because the other guy got a rest. And so I'm bringing this up so you'll understand our meeting later. All right, so we're in the trailer, we're in the makeup trailers, blah, blah, blah. I'm leaving, I'm getting ready to go to the set. And I always, at that point, whenever there was a big sports star on the show, I would bring gloves, or Mario Andretti, I brought him a car, or whatever. Payne Stewart, I brought him golf balls, so that I could get them for auction items for the school, and then maybe one for my kids or whatever. So I'd have them sign more than one thing. So I had gloves. I had 2 gloves for Evander to sign. And Bruce, who is one of our executive producer showrunners, comes, he says, Bruce, Evander's here. You want to meet him? And I was like, yes. So I get my gloves. I leave the makeup trail. I come down, and Evander is like 8 feet tall. And Bruce is like 4 feet tall. And me. And so we go up, and we're like looking up at this giant. And he is really mean looking, glaring at me. I mean, from the moment Bruce introduced, he goes, this is Pat Richardson. She's the leading woman on the show, Tim's wife. And he's glaring at me because he sees these gloves, right? And I go, hi, I'm Pat, and I play Jill. And I wondered if you would mind signing these gloves, because it's for a charity and for my sons. And I know it's a pain in the ass. I know sometimes it's really a pain in the ass, but I'm going to be getting, the whole time I'm talking, he's getting more and more glary and more angry. And I'm terrified. I mean, and Bruce starts babbling. Bruce starts, Evander, this is Jill. She's the wife on the show. She's not just, she's the wife on the show. And he still glares at Bruce, glares at me. So I'm like spinning my wheels down and go, and Evander, I just want you to know. I saw that fight. that you were in, where the guy landed on the thing in the goddamn the thing with the thing and it stopped the fight, and we were so mad because you were winning and it stopped. It just gave the other guy an advantage, and we were so pissed because it was so unfair to you. And as I'm talking, his face totally changed. I mean, it went from "I'm going to kill you" to the sweetest smile you've ever seen. I mean, his whole face just relaxed, and he started smiling, and so sweet. He went to like little baby sweet
teddy
smile.
bear, yeah.
And just took the gloves, signed the gloves. It was like a miracle. I was just like, oh. And then we went to go shoot, and I'm standing there with Miss America on the site that we're standing on, and Miss America and I are meeting, and we're looking at the camera. We every time we try to say our lines, somebody in a house behind us would scream as loud as they could. Habitat for Hawkins! Habitat for Hawkins! and we're like, huh? And all of the male writers ran back into this little covered thing that they could hide behind. And we're the only ones out there. The cameramen, everybody ran away. And the Miss America and I are standing there all by ourselves looking at each other going, where'd they go? And the cop, like somebody went and got, and I think they were just trying to get paid, to be quiet.
Yeah.
And then the cops told us that was like a drug dealing house, and they were really mad that we were interrupting their business. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
That's my Evander story, and
that's a good Evander story.
Right.
I mean, of all the Evander stories I've heard,
it's good.
Like
It's yeah.
Might be the best
I
one.
also have George Foreman. George Foreman was so cute, and George was there with a bunch of his children, all of whom were named George. I'm not kidding. Every one of his kids are named George Foreman Jr., George Foreman Jr., George Foreman Jr. Now, they also have other names so that they can tell me, I was like, this is Tom, this is Dick, this is Harry. But they are all named George Foreman so they can all use that name if they want.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So I'm not going to say favorite anymore.
Nope.
I'm going to rephrase it.
Okay.
Yeah. Memorable. Let's go with some memorable Jill moments on the show, some scenes or lines that really stand out to you.
Well, I will tell you, you know about Billy Reback and how he would write our great one-liners, right? Billy Reback was a stand-up comic. Billy Reback was a stand-up comic who was in the writing room. It was great for writing those great punchy one-liners, and he also warmed up the audience for us. So he would be really hilarious warming up the audience. And we were doing the vasectomy episode, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Exactly.
And And he wrote me, one of my best lines was the one about when we're talking to the doctor's office, and Tim refers to his private area, we say.
Private area.
His private area.
Sure.
And I'm trying to remember, how does he refer to it? This is not going to be funny unless I get the setup, and I'm trying to remember his setup. But my line was, he says something about, my men's zone and or something. And I say, oh, you got a theme park between your legs now? And that was such because of the setup, I know it doesn't matter. It got like, that was another one of those really long laughs. And I was like, thank you, Billy. Thank you, Billy. I bow down to you. That was a great line. I always liked my drunk scene with Wilson when Wilson brings over the cough syrup. And Tim has gone out with another woman playing pool with that woman that was all, it was obvious. They come over and it was obvious to me that she was after him, and I'm threatened and everything, but I'm also really sick. And Earl brings me a bunch of cough syrup. And by the time Tim gets home, I'm completely 3 sheets to the wind and, questioning him about his date with this woman. Yeah, I like that scene.
We just saw one where there was
the exact opposite.
It was a book club scenario wherein Tim got kind of jealous and listened to the Madame Bovary tape. So it's good that they got both sides of that.
Oh, I forgot
we just
that
covered
one.
that.
We'll have to listen to your coverage of it. I don't know. And then we have to talk about our disagreement over how.
Okay, we'll save that for the very end because I don't want it to get contentious and you'll want to just like leave. So. No.
No. I promise I won't I won't disagree. We're not talking about Trump now. We're just
that's right. That's true.
So it's not worth.
We wouldn't disagree with you on that either. I'm sure. But all right. So next speed round. First thing you thought after the show wrapped.
Oh wow, such relief. Because I was the one that didn't want to do the show again for another year because I had already Jonathan Taylor Thomas and I were the only ones that had 7-year contracts. And Jonathan left after his contract ended and went on to do other things. I would have if I could have, because I had not seen my children for 7 years. I mean, once the twins left the dressing room to go to nursery school, I lived in Santa Monica, and the show is in Burbank, and it would take me an hour to get home at night. And we had long days, 5 days a week on that show. Whereas most of the other sitcoms in town, by the time they'd get to the, I don't know, fifth year or even sooner, were going to 4-day weeks and shorter days. We were still in a 5-day week, and I was still getting home late. We would sometimes not do run-throughs until 5. And then after the run-through, we had notes. And then I had a driver because I was going to work with the kids and then coming home with the driver. And then later I was driving. But it was crucifying. And then I would have to, with the reason I had drivers, I'd sleep sometimes on the way home in the car, because I then had a whole nother thing when I got home where, putting the kids to bed, blah, 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 blah. So it was exhausting. And after the divorce, I was then a single mother and the only primary parent in the entire show that was there 5 days a week as much as I was. Because Tim had a wife, all the writers had wives. The women that were writers Roz didn't have children. Marley had children, but she was only there 3 days a week. All the other writers had wives home taking care of their kids. I was the only, I didn't have live at home babysitters. I never did that, because it's just another person you end up having to take care of, and I didn't want people in between me and my kids on the weekends or at night. I just wanted us, because then you're not having that intimacy with your kids. So I was, and, after the divorce, I had them more than he did. So it was, plus, during your time off, you get you work 3 weeks, you get a week off. That week is the week that you're running around taking care of the things that have to be taken care of in the life. You're getting stuff for your kids.
It's not like a vacation or anything.
No. And I would go have lunch with my kids because I live near their school. So I would go and have lunch with them. You're getting stuff for your house, your publicity, your blah, 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 blah. And so there's just really, it was exhausting. And I had not had a date, I don't think. I was wanted to have a life. So I was the only one of everybody in home improvement that was I was so sad, because I knew it was going to be a hard cutoff, but I also really just wanted to be with my kids. I quit pretty much. I was offered things you would not believe I turned down when I left home improvement. But I knew that I could not enter another show for 7 years and be away from them, because they needed one parent who was going to make them first. And that was me, because my ex-husband was an actor and he was leaving for 3 months at a time to go do a movie or a show or something. And I had a 2-week rule, which is I never left my kids if it meant being away from them longer than 2 weeks. Now, if I could do something in the summer where they could then come to see me, I think I did one TV movie where I was gone 2 weeks, then they came to me for the next 2 weeks. But I never left them, and I was not about to move back to New York or drag them around the country the way my parents did me. And that was also the case with Ray. Ray was moved around a lot too, so we were determined that we weren't going to do that to our kids. They were going to go to one school and stay in one town their whole school life. And so it meant that I had to turn down anybody that called from New York and wanted me to go back there and do a play. Or I had to turn down I turned down series, big parts of the series, because it would be an hour drama and it would be 7 years and I'd never see them again. Or if it was going to be a sitcom set around me, once again, I'd be like, goodbye, kids. And I just felt like they needed to know that there was one parent that was putting them first before the career. And I knew now that I had enough money to live for the rest of my life if I never worked another day. And so I just felt that so when Home Improvement was over, I pretty much quit working, except for little things here and there, for, a year or two. I didn't do anything until Strong Medicine. And the reason I took that was because they offered me a 4-day week. I only had them 1 day that I was working. And it was a Lifetime, really under the radar, ensemble show. I knew that it wouldn't be as hard. Drama shows are so much easier to do than sitcoms. And so I did that for 3 years because I knew it would be 7 years. It was an easy thing for me to do. And then when I took West Wing, they said, oh, it's just a guest shot, and I didn't know that it would be 3 weeks each episode and that each day would be grueling and long and I wouldn't know when they would be and that it would turn out to be 2 years worth of guest shots. And so after West Wing, I did totally quit the business for 4 years. Because by this point now, my twins were really had different issues, but needed me to be home. So I completely quit until my last child went to college. And then I started going back out to the business.
All right, I hate to stop it there, but we've reached an hour mark, and so we're going to split the interview into 2 parts. And so there's obviously a lot of great information that we've already gleaned from Patricia, but she has more to say. We've got to finish the speed round. We've got to talk a little bit about the West Wing and some other things that she did, some more behind-the-scenes home improvement stuff, and finally, she takes us to task when we talked about Howard's End in our review of that. So stay tuned. Next week, we'll have part 2, another hour with Patricia Richardson.